3-minute theory. The previous lessons focused on major and minor intervals, your seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths. This lesson focuses on fourths, fifths, and octaves, which you can define as perfect, augmented, or diminished. And we're going to spend most of our time talking about fourths and fifths. Fourths, fifths, and octaves can be classified as perfect, augmented, or diminished. If you know how to construct a major scale, you can figure out if a fourth, fifth, or octave is perfect, augmented, or diminished. Here's a C major scale mapped out on the second string. F is a fourth above C, G is a fifth above C, and the next higher C is an octave above the original C. These intervals are perfect intervals. The upper note of each interval belongs in the major scale based on the lower note of the interval, and that scale being, in this case, C major. And we're going to get back to this concept in just a minute. A diminished interval is 1/2 step or 1 fret smaller than its corresponding perfect interval. So if I lower each of these notes by a 1/2 step, but still call them by the same letter name, that's very important, we have C to F flat, a diminished fourth. This is not an interval we're going to spend any time on because it's enharmonically equivalent to a major third. We also have C to G flat, diminished fifth, which is an important interval. An augmented interval is 1/2 step or 1 fret larger than its corresponding perfect interval. If I raise these notes by a 1/2 step, but still call them by the same letter name, we have C to F sharp, an augmented fourth, and C to G sharp, an augmented fifth. And just a little bit about the octave to be thorough. If you take that upper C and lower it by 1 fret and still call it some sort of C, you would call it a C flat. This is a diminished octave, and if you raise that upper C to a C sharp, you have an augmented octave. That being said, we usually leave octaves alone, so the rest of this lesson is fourths and fifths only. With enough time and study, you'll be able to recognize perfect, augmented, and diminished intervals right away. To get to that point, take yourself through this process. First, build a major scale based on the lower note of an interval. If the upper note is a fourth or fifth higher, it'll either be a perfect, augmented, or diminished fourth or fifth. If that upper note belongs in the major scale built on the lower note, it's a perfect fourth or fifth. If that upper note is a 1/2 step lower than what would have been a perfect interval, it's a diminished fourth or fifth. And if that upper note is a 1/2 step higher than what would have been a perfect interval, it's an augmented fourth or fifth. So let's say you have this set of intervals with D being the lowest note of each set. Since D is the lowest note of each interval, construct a D major scale, and now you have a measuring tool. D up to G is a fourth. G is part of a D major scale, so D up to G is a perfect fourth. D up to G sharp is also a fourth. G sharp is not part of the D major scale. The fourth scale degree of D is G. G is a 1/2 step higher, so D up to G sharp is an augmented fourth. D up to A sharp is a fifth. A sharp also is not part of the D major scale. The fifth scale degree of D is A. A sharp is a 1/2 step higher, so D up to A sharp is an augmented fifth. D up to A, which belongs in the D major scale, is a perfect fifth, and D up to A flat is a diminished fifth. The next lesson focuses on finding and playing perfect, augmented, and diminished intervals on the fretboard. When that lesson's ready, I'll post a link at the end of this video. Meanwhile, for more guitar lessons, music theory, and solo guitar arrangements, please subscribe.